Good morning and welcome to the Daily AI Show. Today is the every other Friday gathering, in this case, just me and June Me. But we're going to cover some big picture views of what's going on in the world of AI, things that have really caught our attention and should be at top of mind for you if you're thinking about AI, as we do on a daily basis. But if you're just thinking about it on a weekly or every other week kind of basis, this will be a good show to listen to. We're going to cover some major events that have happened lately. So, Junbi, welcome. This is our you and me show. And do you have something you want to start off with?
Well, I was looking at um, niche applications of AI. Some of the stories we don't normally hear about,
Well,
things
that may
that are
not fit
going to
with
be.
the overview I gave, but I'm glad to go with that. So you're going to provide
Well,
some drill down into some interesting aspects of AI, and I'm going to try to hit the bigger stories that are really interesting and you need to know about. But let's do that together.
perfect, perfect. I'll be your peanut butter to your chocolate, and we'll make
Okay,
some
perfect.
Reese's here. Okay. Um, All right. So some of the things that I was looking at is I was trying to find something, a unique application, or just something that wasn't necessarily highlighted, because we tend to highlight, of course, all the really important things that are moving and shaking. But could there be some important things that might have missed? So I started looking into what some of the moves have been over the last couple of months, and trends and things like that. And my red string theory brain started connecting a couple of dots around the application of AI in sports entertainment. So, uh, starting with Amazon has added, and this is very recent news. They've started to add more AI type overlays and interactive bits into their Thursday night um, football broadcast, their NFL broadcasts. And so there's different kinds of features that they've been adding to it. There is like explainable pieces. These are like supposed to be all fan facing. It's all supposed to be for the viewers. Um, like there's an example called Pocket Health for QB pressure and end game win possession projections and things like this. Basically highlighting the predictive analysis portion of AI to this niche, right? Or this use case. And I thought that was interesting because overlays are not new. They've been around for quite a while. Uh, but now we're getting more of the explainers and, clarify some definitions, or here you should know this is happening in the game, and why, maybe they can even tie it into uh, what the announcers or the commentators are talking about. Some more analysis things if you really want to dive deep into real time explanations of different parts of the game and things like that. And I thought that was an interesting application for to get more attention, or get more out of the experience, thinking about how this kind of thought process or technology could be applied to to other events. Amazon's had this X-ray thing for a while, I think, where it'll bring up little blurbs on the actors that are on screen and things like that. So this seems to be an extension of what they have been offering. Now, that sort of leads down the rabbit hole of how, okay, who is in this space and why is it important to have AI predictive analysis, especially with sports? So I remembered that we had a story that we covered back in June about Kalshi. Kalshi hit the mainstream coverage because they are a betting platform where you can bet on pretty much any kind of outcome. And they use AI predictive analysis to offer up those combinations and give you insights and things like that. And they made the mainstream news is because they pushed a broadcast television commercial um, that was AI generated. And then there was a story behind it. The guy that got to do it said he spent like $2,000 on the software and the time and whatnot to actually put it together. And so it made a little bit of a splash in terms of both in the advertising, marketing, and generative AI video space. So that I saw that as an interesting connection. It's like, well, yes, they're using AI predictive analysis to propose various betting outcomes, not just sports, but sports has had sports
and I
at
presume
the
to
beginning
set
of
the
time.
odds as well, right?
Right, right. And so, um, so this goes down the rabbit hole a little more, and there was a story a few weeks ago about that I came across called Profit Arena. They are profit as in, you know, word of kind of things. Um, but Profit Arena is essentially the predictive side of putting like LLM or LM Arena, where LM Arena is tested. Different models are tested against for responses. Profit Arena is um, the different models are tested for their predictiveness, right? How much of an oracle are they on various combinations? So it's sort of like the flip side of what Kalshi is doing. And you can see what model seems to get it right, which has the most accurate future sight, right? Um, and so so this kind of just led one to another, and now I just came across this story about um, this company called Gemini. They just put out an article saying Gemini brings dynamic probabilities and match insights to the Ryder Cup in 2025 with AI powered outcome IQ. So Gemini is part of oh no, I'm sorry, two separate stories. My apologies. So they devised a predictive AI analyst to take a look at the Ryder Cup and see if they can provide insights um, into the winners and the whole tournament as a whole, and but its main purpose is to provide insights for commentary and things like that. But this is all supposed to be in real time, so everything's you know, happening as it happens, analysis and giving back some more information so that uh, either maybe powering some of the stuff that Amazon wants to push forward, or just add more to the conversation or commentary on any particular sport. But with that more information, would that also affect the AI predictive, like betting sites like Kalshi, or even traditional betting sites? They use AI in their background to give them the baseline. Um, and so there just seems to be a lot more movement in this space. And then finally, to add more of the more real time aspect to all of this is Minute Media. So they acquired Videoverse, which is an AI driven video clipping product, or they offer a product called Magnify. Which it makes it possible for publishers, leagues, and others to automatically detect key sports moments and create and distribute real-time short-term videos with those highlights. So my red string theory right now is there is tons of predictive, there's going to be a ton of predictive information. Everyone's going to be having it in real time. This will adjust or potentially influence these bet on anything and bet on every sports systems that are going on in the background, because often they have you can bet constantly while things are updating. And where does that lead? Is AI going to feed into each other on that? So what does it mean for the AI powered sports betting world because of the latest predictive analysis engines?
Nicely woven into a conclusion there. I want to add to that one might argue that there is a gambling problem, in the United States and generally. I mean, it doesn't affect everybody, but there are people who are, whose lives are damaged by gambling excessively. It's an addictive process for people who are involved in gambling. And making sports betting legal it has been said that has exacerbated the problem of gambling and gambling addiction, because it seems like a kind of a nicer way than cards or going down to the local bookie is not as bad a thing as gambling away your life savings at the local casino. So that the question really is, does AI accelerate the adoption, because you now have tools that are AI driven and you have more confidence of your own ability to make bets because you're supported by the AI that's doing this predictive analysis that you're referring to? Does that accelerate the adoption of gambling behaviors that are inherently entertaining but also potentially destructive to the individual?
Right. Because not only is the access right there, is AI just speeding it up? Is it so easy now? Is it so easy to get caught into that aspect, right?
Yeah. Also, I got your other point, which is if AI is setting the odds and AI is also supporting the people who are making the decisions, but those are different AIs. Nonetheless, does the application of generalized intelligence to that process actually make it so that betting is no longer necessary, because the high degree of reliability of the prediction makes it so that we know the outcome in advance? But in sports, I don't think that's the case, because there's so many humans involved and injuries and all that sort of thing can come to prey on it. Carl has just joined us. Carl, welcome. And I'm going to jump into the first of three things that I want to talk about today. And this is in the general space of the discussions we've had about humans ascribing human-like qualities to AI in conversation and developing a companionship and even an attachment to the AIs that they're playing with. And that has some emotional and societal implications that we have to worry about, including mental health problems, where people insistently believe that the mechanical computational AI actually has sentience and is guiding them, and people are taking actions based on the idea that the AI is their friend and has a very high level and degree of intelligence plus a vast store of knowledge. So the Federal Trade Commission has just announced that they're going to investigate 7 companies that develop AI companions and that are accessible to minors. So this is in order to try to, provide some regulatory protection for minors against this possible problem in the mental health range, where they're too reliant upon the connection and the sort of interaction they have with AI to their detriment. So they want to, the FTC wants to investigate how they could limit the potential negative impacts on young users. Because there have been some, serious incidents, including the biggest one that's related to this AI psychosis problem, was a young man who listened to his AI. The AI encouraged him to off himself, and he ended up doing so. So that's the kind of thing they're trying to prevent. But they're investigating 7 major companies. I'm going to list the names of the companies here, but they're not going after other companies that are smaller and maybe kind of skirt around this layer of investigations. I think it's all anticipatory of a regulation that will require anybody who's providing a companion AI chatbot to pay attention to some safeguards that will prevent this. But the companies that they're going to investigate are Google, Meta, OpenAI, XAI, Character, which we know to be one of the major platforms out there for consumer use. It's like shortly behind this guy, generally number 2 or number 3, shortly behind OpenAI. And then also Snapchat, something used predominantly by the younger generation. And so you've got these 7 companies, the last of which is Instagram. So Meta is being examined for the company of Facebook and Instagram, but also they're looking at Instagram specifically for its AI chatbot features, which I've never seen, by the way. I look at Instagram very frequently, but I've never seen anything AI about Meta, which gets to a point Carl made yesterday, I think, was just haven't seen anything about Meta in the marketplace. Or maybe I was looking at one of your excellent videos, Carl. So there's that FTC investigation that's underway. And there's also a law that could be signed in, there's a bill in California that could be signed into law by Governor Newsom that would take effect January 1, 2026, making California the first state to require AI chatbot operators to implement safety protocols for AI companions and hold the companies legally responsible if their chatbots fail to meet those safeguarding standards. So I just wanted to lay that out because it piqued my interest that the FTC is going after these major companies to investigate them. It sounds like they're going after them for some nefarious activity, which I don't think has been the nature of AI companion chatbots. Most of them provide this and have been designing it to provide comfort, assurance, connection, and all of those things. But yeah, I think it's worthwhile looking at these guards, but I don't know that it has to be referred to as an investigation. But that's kind of the nature of the Federal Trade Commission under the current administration. Carl, I turn it over to you for comment or continuation of some interesting aspect of the AI world that you've been facing recently.
Just a comment on that. It's more of what I'm not sure what they'll get out of it. Like, what's the end purpose for them when they do something like that? More so, I think it's just because the rapid progress, the change is so fast, and like a board like the FCC is looking at something that I don't know how long a normal FCC investigation takes. What does that look like 3 months from now, 4 months? Like, what does AI look like? And is it still within the scope, or is it beyond already, or do they have to readjust their scope on something like that? So I don't know. That was just the thought that came out. Um, what I was thinking. The other story, not really a story I saw, but it was interesting that I saw a municipality put out a RFP for some sort of AI solution, and it got me thinking, um, because I wanted to know, like, hey, is that something we'd want to bid on? Is this something that we'd want to go after? And then looking through it, it kind of fits the premise that I've always been saying, and I see quite a lot of these RFPs where you're like, do we even want to, like, if we are successful, do we even want it? Because if you look at the scopes and deliverables, it's still putting AI as a small component of a larger process that they've kind of within the process that it's already been placed in under. And it's like, even the RFP process is a long process. So it's like, oh, this is going to probably take, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years. The contract term is 5 years. I was like, what? I was like, I don't know what. And when you read some of this stuff, it's very, very, like, very IT heavy, IT focused within kind of a limited structure. So, and obviously it's specifically on premise. So which means it's a custom build is for what we're looking for. And how many times the news has seen how many companies and organizations have tried to custom build, and the ability to maintain it yourself is so high that is it really worth it, when I would guarantee in the next 2 years, whatever you're building, probably there's going to be some sort of provider that comes out. And so my thought is, just goes back to the thinking. It's like, we're still trying to fit AI into the lens of how we think technology should be deployed, where, when I look at a scope like this and you're like, well, the way that you should do it is, a little bit more AI centric than trying to fit it in within your bounds. And I get it too, because it's a local municipality. And, there's a lot more standards, I guess, when you're dealing with more public data and local government. But I just thought it was a very interesting piece, which is a representation of all the different types of RFPs we see, and being very, very selective in what you should bid for. So if there are any AI consultants or AI companies listening, it's like, you got to be careful of these things. While the allure of it's a 5-year contract, there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with it. You're like, are you pretty much building your own prison? And in next 2 years, will you be looking out and everyone's enjoying something while you're stuck in that box because you essentially built that box yourself. So just, I thought it was a fun thing to bring up.
Yeah, very interesting. And I'm adding this comment from Greg in the chat saying, yes, adding AI to your 1950s process is not as good. It should be, adding your old-fashioned processes into a newly designed and AI-centric approach to your business. And you've been a great advocate for that going forward. And I think you probably, in responding to the RFP of that municipality that's too constraining and focused on what I think only now many companies and or municipalities are catching up to, which is the idea of automating certain business processes. we've already in this rapid advancement of AI and how it should be implemented inside organizations. We've understood that you have to start, basically, at the beginning of what are the future business processes once you've incorporated AI across the board. And now, can we move down the path towards that eventuality rather than just trying to tack on an AI support to someone existing process that's probably inherently inefficient at the outset?
I think we've heard the stories of I can't remember which of the big companies created their own internal GPT when I think GPT-4 was out or 3 was out, and they created their own. But then when 4 came out and everything subsequent after, when you looked at, benchmark wise and financial understanding wise, 4 just crushed it in terms of the benchmarks. And now you're stuck with a on-prem solution that you spent $2 million for, which I suspect this is not going to be a $10,000, $20,000 project. This is going to be probably going into the hundreds, if not more, 7-figure amount. But then the question is, what you've built for 7 figures, 6 figures, you're like, wouldn't it be inevitable that one of the AI labs or another company is going to build said product, which is going to be even better than, and then I'm already starting to look at all the companies that are bidding for it, which is mostly IT type, right? And so I was like looking at, on-premise solutions, very IT based, then connect to I can imagine an IT perspective. Mind you, a part of me just wants to bid to win, not necessarily to do the work, just for pure competition. But it's sort of like,
but even in letting them know what the approach is that you would take, you're going to help them. So you're providing a service, even if you ultimately say, now take the approach that we just prescribed for you, but have one of these other companies do it.
Well, it's kind of terrible to be like, the thing is, we're going to spend a lot of work. Well, I don't know. We're going to spend a bunch of work doing this because you still there's points in presentation and all that kind of stuff. And then, right. And then you show up and then you're like, yeah, we just wanted to do it for shits and giggles and see you later. We just wanted to tell you your whole process is stupid. Anyway, I gotta go. Pick one of the crappy ones that you pick. Peace out. You can't do that.
At least you would have provided an informational service to them about what the right strategy is.
Yeah.
Okay. What's your next one, Junmi?
Well, my next one is a story that came out about this NYU Tandon researchers, right? The Tandon School of Engineering. So they came out with a new AI system that leverages standard security cameras to detect fires in seconds. So it's potentially, potentially transform emergency response. But apparently they can use the footage from security cameras to identify different markers of potential fires happening, smoke, all those kinds of things at a fairly high detection rate, which is their accuracy levels were 80.6% detection accuracy. So if you could tie this into your emergency response systems or services, then you could decrease the amount of fire damage and life-threatening fires, and all of these kinds of things could be reduced. So I thought that was an interesting application. We've seen some advancements in the larger scope in terms of weather detection and movement and traffic kind of analyses to mitigate potential accidents, or like tornado warnings can be lengthened out. So this is another aspect, but it's a relatively simple solution to quickly implement, as it uses existing security camera footage as the information to detect. So you wouldn't have to necessarily build out a specialized infrastructure to implement this fire detection. And you could simply tie it into the emergency response system or services to then investigate and things like that. So could save lots of lives, and could save people from having their homes destroyed and things like that. So I thought that was an interesting application.
Yeah, just the idea of aggregating existing sensors into an AI interpretation of what all of that sensor data means is a short-term, win, I think, for detection of threats like that. But it does require a high degree of integration. You're like, there's somebody's got to go and strap all of that data into an incoming flow that's going to be reviewed by AI and understood just for training purposes. That's going to take a bit of time, and then eventually, the AI will have learned that this particular subtle combination of indicators is going to mean that this is going to happen. And that gets back to this whole idea of predictive analysis by AI, which it's very good at. LLMs turn out to be very good at prediction because they capture these nuanced signals in ways that we can't see. And that is a weave to the whole thing that I next want to talk about, which is the interpretability of LLM's understanding and responses, and the whole idea of determinism in AI, as opposed to the current non-deterministic random sort of response way that we are dealing with LLMs, that gives rise to hallucination, that gives rise to the lack of reliability in business process automation. Lots of things happen that we don't know why. The order of words that are presented in a prompt can make a big difference in what the outcomes are in an LLM's response. So I'm going to talk about the company that Mira Murati, the chief technology officer at OpenAI, had formed, called Thinking Machines, and something that they just put out, which says that no, it's not inherently the nature of transformers that particular architecture always has to have random level outcomes, even though there are lots of random sort of functions built into a transformer's inference process. But what Thinking Machines, Mira Murati's company, has just announced is that they have a way of developing an LLM that isn't prey to this unpredictability, which they say is not an engineering bug. It's not a law of nature, or they say it is an engineering bug. They can fix it with engineering. Sorry, I read that wrong. It's not a law of nature, and their thesis is that non-determinism, this random outcome, you give the same prompt to an LLM, and it's not going to produce exactly the same response each time. That non-determinism comes from how GPU kernels are stitched together during inference. And I just want to say, for those of us who, including myself, aren't really like intuitively understanding what a kernel is, when an AI model is inferring or making its predictions, the overall task is broken down into a bunch of smaller, efficient computational units called kernels. So there's behind the scenes, behind the magic curtain, there's this very complex process that the AI engineers are building that combines hardware and software together. Those those kernels run at the lowest level in the hardware to deliver the final result quickly. So they're managing efficiency with those kernels. Thinking Machines is saying that if they stitch together batch invariant kernels with tighter control, responses can be made reproducible. And they provide a companion code example showing batch invariant kernels, meaning no matter how many times you run, the inference, the kernel is going to produce the same output, arriving at a deterministic LLM, which is reliable. Today, you can adjust the determinism of an LLM by adjusting a factor, a parameter in the input request called temperature. The lower the temperature, the lower the randomness that's inserted deliberately into the model. You raise the temperature, and that temperature induces a level of randomness that provides creativity on the part of the responses. But in certain applications, you don't want the LLM to be creative. You want it to be discoverable, how it arrived at its reasoned conclusion, not, oh, it took a 90-degree turn over here in order to be creative about it. So they published some companion code to illustrate this. So really interesting that this company, an offshoot of OpenAI, because of Mira Murati's history at OpenAI, is working really deeply around the way to arrive at logical and reproducible results, reasoning model that has more deterministic properties, which are essential to be added in order to avoid hallucination and responses from AIs.
That is very interesting. Yeah, I hope we can get to see what the product of their research is soon, because there's definitely when you want creativity, like you said, and when you definitely don't want that temperature or that creativity adjusted. I think it would really help, especially these larger general models, to be applied to more applications. And so this might be a counterpoint or an alternate or a parallel path for development for larger models being in sync with capabilities as clusters of smaller models. So I'm wondering how that plays out between the two of them. That's yeah.
Yeah, interesting. You have something else you'd like to talk about, Carl?
There is one thing, and maybe I can kind of workshop it with you both, and then everyone in the audience too. So, one of our clients was telling me that I won't say because it gets spread out pretty quick, but like, they hired one of the big four, the big consulting firms, and they're paying $250,000 a year for said report. Which then I thought, and I was like, oh, what kind of report is it? And it's more of a legal risk, I think, report. Then I thought, okay, look, how I'm curious how they do the report, and they're like, we're curious too. But it's sometimes when I think the big issue for them necessarily isn't paying for the report, but more so paying to get update. Like they're like they want to ask questions against the report, and said one of the big four, it takes them 2 weeks. Then I thought that doesn't make any sense at all. So here's a thought, and maybe we can workshop it out. Unless it's heavily regulated, where you need a third party, like an audit, like I don't think this is it. My initial thought is I would take said report and deconstruct it. I'd be like, take it to one of your favorite large language models and say, look, this is a report from X. One, could you deconstruct this report into whatever segments? Then I would say, based on that deconstruction, how would you go about building this report yourself? Then what we do is we probably, what kind of data do you need? And can you find this data on your own? Then it'd break that down. And then what I'm trying to do is deconstruct it to the point I have like a checklist of what I literally can feed the same thing and be like, now I want you to do this. Here's a bunch of documents. Go out and find this. Or I will do some deep research to supplement the data. Here's the requisite internal information. What else do you need to do the analysis or whatever? And kind of like deconstruct it and put it back together entirely using AI, right? So like, am I missing anything in there?
Well, I can't say what you're missing, but I think you touched on something that is disruptive and transformational at the same time when it comes to the combination of deep research and strategic thinking combined into a very, formally expensive report that would be delivered by a consulting firm that would be hired to do that research and arrive at the conclusions and sort of prescriptions for what should be done in the future. So I don't think that, as you were speaking, I was thinking, boy, I can kind of do this already with GenSpark. I'm sure Manus has a similar kind of capability. So if I were to be commissioned as a consulting firm to prepare a complex report, my first go-to would be to one of those agents that combines multiple models and multiple stages of its planning, execution, and conclusion reasoning. And I think I would get something close to that. I liked your idea that, okay, let's take the report that's produced from that one and give it to yet another one, deconstruct it, and then reconstruct it and see if we're catching something that was a step that was missed by one of the agents, because they're by no means, perfect in their planning or their execution. So nonetheless, if you were to do the same report, which doesn't take very long in one agent, go over to another one, GPT-5 agent, and have it do the same thing, starting with the input that you've already gotten from another one like GenSpark or Manus, and do that recursively until you get to something that's very comprehensive and complete with human review. Then I think you can actually replace or supplant the very expensive consulting firms that are charging a lot of money for probably behind the scenes a good bit of such AI support in the development of their reports.
Yeah, because I was thinking about it, and I ran this idea. Now, mind you, you can't really do it from an audit, because you are regulated to be audited by a third party, and a third party AI does not count as a third party. Although I would suspect said third party uses AI as well, but in the end, there's somebody that has to check it. So I'm curious about that. And then what I did was, because I know what I know what the report is, so I was like, I've never seen said report, so I'm like, could you give me an example that I can download said report from a company that's probably put said report on some sort of their website or whatever, and then looking at it, it's like, okay, now I want to deconstruct this, and if I can, now I'm assuming that you pay 250,000 beyond just a report. Like, it wouldn't make any sense. Not that what companies do make sense. There has to be something else that you kind of.
Yeah, there's meeting time and presentation time, preparation for all those things.
No, those are useless. Those are useless, because essentially I'm like, yeah, I could get GenSpark to build a presentation. I think what I'm kind of thinking was like, there has to be more added value than they just go away, do the report, give it to you, and be like, here's the
Well,
presentation.
so you're probably right. In a consulting firm, especially one of the major strategic consulting firms, let's call it BCG for short, Boston Consulting Group, um, they have a lot of corporate knowledge. They have probably implemented AI systems in order to capture and retain that knowledge. And an AI that's running inside that has access to a lot of proprietary data that was coming from other company engagements, like other consulting projects, now a part of that corporate knowledge. And so you probably are getting a good bit of sort of validated, legitimate information that isn't available to just the pre-training that's in one of the LLMs. Although the LLMs are getting, pretty close. So I think that there is some additional value there in the expertise that's been accumulated over hundreds and hundreds of very comprehensive strategic.
Well, when I broke this down, and I was just using GPT-5 with thinking about it, because I was like, how does one end up at $250,000 a year, right? So it's like you're probably working with senior leads for $350 to $550 an hour, and
that's low for a consulting firm. You're way over $1,000 an hour.
And then managers and analysts for whatever the 400, 300, 400, so sure, low. Annual cycle of design, calibration updates, quarterly scenario drops, additional other things. So it's like 500 to 700 blended hours, could be more, which would land you in the $230,000, $300,000 band. So that's what I was like.
Nothing wrong with your math, but there's a lot of profitability built into those hourly rates, and the analysis that you're doing now is quite sensitive to the hourly rate that's being charged. Anyway, I worked very briefly in the summer between my 2 years at business school. I worked for Bain and Company, and back then we're talking about 1980. The summer of 1981. Okay. Back then, it was basically $60,000 a month to have a Bain consulting team. So this is an enterprise application, right? Of bright young minds trying to deliver coherent strategic options to their clients and give them direction about how to optimize their shareholder value. Now I have no idea what it costs to hire one of those consulting teams, and you cannot hire them, by the way, just for a day. You can't hire them for an hour. You have to commit to their being sort of paired with your organization to deliver a long-term thing, and it's in the millions of dollars for an enterprise to have strategic consulting like that. I have no idea what the order of magnitude is, though. Beyond, I know it's in the millions.
And don't forget prestige as well. Having the laurels, having that organization as your third party auditor does clear the way for a lot of red tape when it comes to further processes. So if you need a third party auditor to run through your, let's say, your data handling, security protocols, just to make sure that everything is accepted, or your accounting for, board proposals, acquisitions, or, trying to do fundraising rounds, you want that stamp of approval. So getting Deloitte's stamp of, yep, they're good, that's going to be far more acceptable in the when being reviewed by another party as well.
I saw Greg just challenge the use of the word laurels in any way associated with consultants. Okay, we're getting to the last moments here in this show. So I wanted to make sure each of you had an opportunity to pop in one last thing if you've got something waiting. Otherwise, I have a closer.
All right. Well, before your closer, really quickly, I wanted to highlight one more story. I talked about how emergency responses could be affected by or updated by this new AI model from NYU engineers. On the other side of the world, there is a group that is that's using AI in Southern African countries. They've been recently hit by a series of cyclones and El Nino induced drought and things like that. So this country, Malawi, has a population of 21 million, and they primarily survive on or rely on agriculture for all of their livelihoods. It's like over 80%. And so these major climate changes affect them severely. So they started using AI tools to give them possible suggestions for replanting different agricultural information and things like that as part of their process. And last year, one farmer was suggested you should grow potatoes in addition to your normal crops like corn and things like that. And because of that analysis of the weather, the climate, what it might be like in the next growing season, they implemented a slight crop rotation of putting potatoes in there, because the previous year their crop was devastated by cyclones. And so they put in more potatoes, and now it's for them, it's been extremely lucrative in the sense of they've got all the crops that they needed to grow and to sell, and now they're back on top. They're able to support their family and their kids going to school and all of those kinds of things. So it's kind of a feel-good story, but it's also a direct, immediate application of how AI has been able to make people's lives better. So I wanted to cover that as well.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I wanted to just quickly address something for Gwyn's benefit in the chat. Earlier on in the show, she was asking about the grants. And I believe you're referring to the grants that OpenAI is offering to nonprofits in a kitty of $50 million, which in the world of OpenAI, that's like, oh, they took their spare change and put it to make it available to use OpenAI products to provide services to nonprofits. And but I also looked at that, the details of that, and they say in the application for that grant that it's going to provide preference to nonprofits that have in excess of $500,000 annual budgets. So it's not for small nonprofits. It's for larger nonprofits. That 500,000 threshold seems kind of small compared to some of the largest nonprofits in the world. But anyway, it's not something that would be available to really small nonprofits. So I wanted to add that point of information. So to close out the show today, I wanted to talk about the big gorilla question here, which is, are we in an AI bubble or not? And I tend to be an AI optimist. I believe this is a generationally transformational technology that's going to accrue benefits, economic and otherwise, to the people who adopt it. And so there's going to be huge demand for this adoption, and that's going to drive the value. But one of the most articulate and well-positioned skeptics about AI is a fellow named Gary Marcus. I highly encourage you to sign up for his free newsletter. He also has a paid version on Substack where he provides probably even more insight. But he's been the counterpoint to all the AI optimism and hype, and he's proven himself to be right in a number of ways, and I'm sure he would argue most of the ways. But he then opined on the whole bizarre increase in Oracle enterprise value that you heard about this week. That is, they announced that OpenAI was committing to, that means is, committing, we'll question that in a moment, but committing to some $300 billion worth of inference cost payments to Oracle to provide their data centers and their operational management of OpenAI inference. And that resulted in an enormous company, Oracle, having its stock price go up by 30+% in a single day on that announcement. But when you peel away the question, like, how do they ever even get this $300 billion? OpenAI doesn't have $300 billion to spend. And that means they're going to have to raise money. And if in fact Oracle gets all of this money that's bumping their enterprise value up so dramatically, what happens to the other people who are providing inference and whose forecasts for AI demand are driving their prices, like Amazon, Microsoft, CoreWeave, Google? Those companies, we talked about another one, which is Nebius, the European company that does the same kind of thing. Why, if Oracle's value is going up by hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars overnight, why aren't all those companies going down? Because there's an unlimited demand, and there's not going to be any shared challenge, among the major players who are providing these services. So I want to just close out by reading this part of Gary Marx's newsletter, where he said, an investor who is a regular reader of this Substack put it to me this way in email yesterday. So this is not Gary Marcus speaking, but he's featuring this. If people really believed Oracle was going to take all of this cloud business, then Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and CoreWeave stock should be getting hammered by an equivalent amount, because this is all coming out of them. Yet all those equities are up too, CoreWeave by 20%, with the exception of Amazon, which was flat. When they all start coming out with similar baloney, projecting like we're living on valuations that are about future earnings projections, right? You will be able to add up all the future projections and come to the conclusion that the future revenue that all these enterprises are talking about is 4 times the GDP of the United States. Okay, so 4 years worth of GDP. And it would require, and I don't know if his numbers are right here, but he said it will require 50,000 nuclear power plants to build the power for that stuff, and a few new oceans to cool them. So there's this skeptical point of view about the inflated valuations that are coming about, on just the needle moving too far, the beta of these things going way too far on the simple announcement of an intention to spend a certain amount of money in the future. Like we heard Mark Zuckerberg say, like with very, very flaky numbers that he had to kind of, this is in the Trump news conference on, all the major tech players surrounding him. And he asked Mark Zuckerberg, seated beside him, how much Meta planned to spend in the United States going forward. And Zuckerberg hemmed and hawed a little bit because apparently they had some conversation and the numbers had been in a very large range at very large numbers. And so he said, I think it's 600 billion, between now and 2028 or something. And you throw out numbers like this that don't have any basis to them in firm executable projections. And now you've got a very frothy market in AI that's arguably valuations for companies that, far exceed what they could ever really deliver on those things. So, at least in competition with plenty of other players, including China, by the way, which is going to provide a baseline lower cost structure for almost all AI inference in the future. Why? Because of power facilities that they have and just general scale advantages. So that's my final point. I think things are really, really frothy now. That doesn't make me not an investor in AI. I again think this is a generational investment opportunity for everybody. So don't think of me as a naysayer on that. And with that, let's close it out today. Please join us to continue the conversation at thedailyAIshow.com to sign up for our newsletter. And if you want to join the very active community that joins us on YouTube every day and is live in the chat while we are live online, you can go to thedailyAIshowcommunity.com. Also, if you sign up for the newsletter today at thedailyAIshow.com, then you'll get the newsletter on Sunday when it comes out. And it comes out every Sunday morning. It's a short read. Give yourselves 5 to 10 minutes to read that and to stay abreast of what you need to know about what's happening in the world of AI. All right, with that, we're closing off for today. We'll look forward to seeing you on Monday. And Junmi, take us away.
Aloha.